The Athene Real Talk Podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk Podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World-famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
There's a very big question in philosophy, even in the science, is why do we experience? Why? If you add all these aspects together, why do we even have to experience? Maybe we would work perfectly without experiencing at all. What is fascinating is that there is a reason why we experience. And it's because the emergent patterns from the collective, if they contribute to thriving the species, they're also a property that has to be part of the equation. The emergent properties of the collective are part of evolutionary reason. And what is very fascinating about it, for example, the internet, right? If the internet would have evolved through billions of years of evolution and you'd have trillions and trillions of internets, the one that would be self-aware, the one that would have this existential drive to exist would thrive amongst all. And maybe that is the difference between a rock and you. It's we have this existential drive to exist. Maybe that is exactly why we haven't been able to purely make artificial intelligence. It's because you need to have this existential drive. The essence of what we are has to be present. And that is at the foundation of all our actions, is wanting to exist. Isn't that beautiful? That the question of why do we experience is the answer to why we exist. Maybe that is the answer all the way, all along. That's the answer. Why we experience is just because that's why we exist and we thrive for it. But the thing is, we are channeling it through this flawed idea of identity. We're channeling it through this concept of this is me, but it's not that. You are truly interconnected with everything. And it really brings about a level of peace and brings you like a level of compassion and wanting to help others because you see yourself in them. You realize on an essential level you are the same, because that's what existence is if you strip identity out of the equation. When I listen to Homo Deus and it says like from a mechanical point of view we don't even need to experience, it caused a lot of dissonance for me, because on a fundamental level I was like, that means the consistency of my existence is contradictory. If my existence itself is not required, then why am I here? Like on a fundamental level it made me question my foundation. And that's why I really started thinking about it and came to a solution in less than an hour. To understand that, the emergent patterns also are properties that make species advance. And that's maybe really truly the essence of what differs us from anything else. It's that existence, that drive, and that's what makes us evolve as well. Comfort is not what you truly value the most. What you value even more, and that is when you go even deeper, is existential equilibrium, is being consistent within your own existence. This essence wants to be complete, because that's what they really understand. Yeah, I want to be complete. And that's why they thrive for identity. They thrive for comfort. They believe in soul. They want that completeness. They want to feel basically complete within their own existence. And that's also where all these existential fears come from. But if you realize that that is what you truly hold on to, and that comfort and identity and soul is just your way of filling up that void, you start realizing that what you wanted was the truth all along. And the truth is not that identity is what you are, or comfort is what brings about this completeness, or soul, but rather that existence itself is life. It is everything around you. It's all your experience. And that brings about understanding also where it comes from and how everything is interconnected. And if you truly understand that this identity is just not you, but existence itself is interconnected with everything around you, and experience itself is just omnipresent, it really like embodies everything, you can start merging with that on an emotional level, let go, and then the consistency, because that might feel like a threat, the consistency is these patterns that bring it about, is this logical understanding which is probabilistic on a fundamental level. So this striving of completeness automatically translates into wanting to be as consistent as possible within the framework of what you are. And that's it. And a lot of people said it's the first time I can really relate emotionally to the click. Like before with the click and logic, I cannot emotionally relate to it. But this I can relate to it because I want to be complete. Why do we strive for meaning? Why do we want purpose? It's because we want to feel complete. It's actually very simple. When life started evolving, it came to a point where the feedback loop that it generated was bringing about more survival than the lack of a feedback loop. And what I mean with the feedback loop is comparable to listening to an orchestra. When one person is misplaying the violin, it's much easier to figure that out by listening to the music rather than going one by one, seeing who is playing the wrong music. So basically, as we evolved, this feedback loop, which we call experience, evolved to such an extent where it became more and more a part of the organism. So our experience is merely a tool that has evolved to allow the organism to evolve more optimally. And that's a very important thing to realize. Experience is a mean to the end, and the end is evolving as an organism. But because it was so efficient through natural selection, it became the focal point of the organism. It became in charge. The brain has evolved in such a way where existence is in charge of the brain. If you want to kill yourself, you can kill yourself. The feedback loop has almost complete control over the brain. And the reason why it evolved that way is because it brought about good results. So like the patterns that emerged in order to bring life, which I call consistency, the consistent patterns that brought about life, have evolved to such an extent that the consistency became the tool and the existence became the goal. But as we evolved even more, with 70,000 years ago, the cognitive revolution, the feedback loop, which is the experience, was so advanced that it could question its own existence, which brought about even exponential growth, because it started grouping itself, trying to find meaning by, creating religion and stuff. And we come to a point now where we even understand the brain and the consistency that brought it about to realize that the goal that we experience as existence is merely a tool that has gotten the keys of the car because of evolutionary reasons. But if you evolve to such an extent, you can actually realize that the true essence and the goal is the consistency rather than existence. And if you wire yourself on a fundamental level to realize that, not only do you align yourself more than ever with what you are, but you excel your growth exponentially. Because if you strive for getting maximum experience, your evolution will be completely crippled, and for some even completely void, than if you say and submit yourself to the consistency instead. So the reason why we have all this identity bullshit is because we just evolved to such an extent that the brain is blind and the experience navigates the reality to such an extent where the importance of our existence started creating a loop, a feedback loop, using identity and stories to strengthen the wrong parts. It's literally a completely dysfunctional cacophony that is going on because of a lack of understanding what we are. But if you truly understand that the essence of what you are existing itself is merely a tool, like the consistency that is actually the goal, you change a paradigm which you are able to do as you are in control. Experience is the one that has the ability to rewire memories, to rewrite thoughts, everything. Through the prefrontal cortex, we have really gained so much capacity and gained so much power, not because existence is important or experience, but rather because it worked. And a step further is understanding the mechanic and realizing that the mean to the end is the other way around. It's not logic that is a mean for existence, which is the end. It is experience, which is a mean for consistency, which is the end. And if you, on a fundamental level, realize that, you clicked. It's that simple. The entire click stuff is merely, and I already talked a lot about it, but it's merely realizing on a fundamental level that the brain has evolved to trust you. It entrusts it with its own survival. Your experience has literally the ability to drink yourself to death, to eat yourself to death, but it's by understanding your true purpose that you're merely a tool that elevates the real purpose of what you are. So what is the difference between you being the tool and you being the feedback loop? The thing is, the feedback loop is what you are, is what experience is. But the brain has evolved to such an extent that this feedback loop, which is your experience, has become the goal because it evolved much more efficiently. But through self-awareness and through understanding, you can realize, but wait a minute, I am not the goal at all. I was always just the tool. That's the thing. If experience was not useful to our existence, we would all be walking robots. The only reason why we experience is because it benefited our survival. And it benefited our survival to such an extent that the brain started fully trusting it, even if it goes against its own existence. If you smoke or eat unhealthy or whatever, you can just do so. Your brain just fully trusts you. So no matter how worthless you feel, your brain has entrusted its own life to the experience, to what you are emotionally. Jesus says, considering all of this is true, why have humans come to the conclusion of spirituality, religion, and God being responsible for their existence? Because they always thought their existence was what it was about. They always thought existence was the purpose. But existence or experience is not the purpose. It's merely a mean. It's a tool. If you understand that the consistency, that evolving itself is actually the purpose, then you put yourself in the correct context and the correct relationship of what you are, which brings about a paradigm that is much more aligned and brings about progress much more efficiently. You can compare it with technology. The brain has invented experience, just as humans have invented nuclear energy, but it can be used to strengthen it, to strengthen evolving, like nuclear energy, nuclear power plants, or it can use to destroy itself, like nuclear war. And that's the same with experience. Experience has been a very efficient tool to push forward life itself. And it has evolved to a point where it could question even itself. The feedback loop, this experience could question itself, and has brought about even all this identity, and all these thoughts and ideas are literally just this experience desperately trying to understand itself, just to come to the conclusion that it's merely a tool in the grander picture. If you understand that experience is merely a tool in the bigger picture, you can let go of it. And as a result, you really become, that's what true enlightenment is. You let go experience itself because you understand it's merely a tool. And it's about the consistency instead. It's about evolving as a superorganism, and you see the relationship, and you have the ability to submit yourself back to this consistency. That's what logic as a core value is. You just submit yourself back because experience has the ability to do so. On a fundamental level, you have to let go the meaning and the purpose you give to your experience. If on a fundamental level you let go the meaning of your own experience and you submit to the consistency instead, that I call logic or whatever you want to call it, your ego, just your entire identity dissolves. And the funny thing is, your awareness grows dramatically. So you have to, on a fundamental level, let go the meaning of experience itself. Why is it flawed to identify with you being an emergent property, or isn't it? The problem is that you give meaning to this emergent property as a goal while it's just a tool. If on a fundamental level you realize that your entire existence that you experience, right? Because that's what it is. When I talk existence, I don't talk about your biological body. I talk about your experience. If you realize it's all merely a tool as a servant to the consistency that brought it about, you start following your true path, which is logic, which is being in line with what you are. And you start using your experience to pursue that, which brings about an increase in awareness and a strengthening of these consistent patterns. I will give you guys a little other story that is more emotional. And it is that it is really beautiful to see how experience very initially, when it started emerging randomly, started having a positive impact to the survival of the organism. So it started creating a synergy between experience and what brings about the experience to the extent where we are now. But it's just amazing to see how complex it is. And that's when you look at all the dendrites and see how our brain, how advanced it is. It is fascinating. It's really like, imagine an internet where the electromagnetic waves that are generated by the electrons going through the wirings is actually taken into account as a feedback loop and can rewire data. Can you guys believe that? How fascinating that is. Imagine like a music player that is so advanced that it's actually taking the music that comes out of it, becomes so advanced that it can change the music it's playing, that it can change the actual music player. We are music players. Our experience is the music that has evolved for so long with synergy with the music player that it can change the music player. It is mind-boggling, that experience, that the synergy between the two has brought about the self-awareness. How crazy is that? If it wasn't for that, the world would be working exactly as it is, but we wouldn't experience. We would literally just run around and have conversations, but we wouldn't experience if it wasn't for this feedback loop. But we needed the feedback loop. Even speaking, even the ability to exist requires experience. Most of the life that we know it is because of this feedback loop. It's so mind-blowing. I find it baffling. The more advanced life. We owe it to the trust that consistency has given and put in our hands. Our experience, our existence, our awareness owes us to the trust that life itself has given us. It's merely a feedback loop. Our own organism, our entire body, these trillions of cells that you contain have trusted this experience to take the lead. Please do not disappoint it by realizing you are merely a servant of it. It's like Trump thinking he's the leader of the world. No, he got the power by the people. Same with your cells. You got control by the cells. It gave it to you through evolution. Don't let it down. How much worthless you feel, whatever, once you realize this, you will feel so much empowered. It's insane.
Subscribe to youtube.com/AtheneWins. Watch the live stream at twitch.tv/AtheneLive and follow The Real Athene on Snapchat.